Kate Denison Herbert.
Present.
Maria Encarnação.
Present.
Yasmin Forbes. Cassie Graham.
Present.
Poppy Kirk.
Present.
Layla Melville.
Present.
Caleb Simon.
Présent.
Declan Skeels.
Present.
Ella Todd.
Present.
Storm Wickenden.
Present.
Lottie Wilmot.
Present.
Le Parlement est constitué. Well, very pleased indeed to welcome you all as members of the Youth Parliament to the Chamber today. The aim of this afternoon's meeting, as I'm sure you all know, is for you to give a final presentation relating to the 3 campaign ideas that you chose on the 26th of September. And following on from interim meetings you've had, which have taken place when you were able to question the ministers responsible for the areas under review. Now, the 3 questions have been submitted to you from States members, and you'll be providing your answers to these this afternoon. We have 5 ministers with us today. Deputy Mezek, who's the Minister for Housing, Deputy Lehegara, who's the Minister for... Is she there? She apologises. She was to have been here. She is the Minister for Justice and Home Affairs. Deputy Ward, who's the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Conitab Géant, who is the Minister for Infrastructure, and Conitab Vibert, who's the Minister for Children and Families, all of whom are happy to answer your questions. We also have Deputy Binet, who is standing in for the Chief Minister, and he will be answering questions that otherwise would have been answered for the Chief Minister. So I hope you're all going to have a great afternoon. I'm sure you will, and I'm certain that ministers are eager to hear the final presentations of your campaign topics and to respond to your questions. So we'll make a start. The first item of business is a presentation and video from Little Parliament, and I now call upon whoever of you or all of you who are going to make that presentation to do so. Off you go.
Hello, my name is Amelia. I attend Little Parliament meetings each week. We all love these sessions as it gives us the opportunity to choose things that we enjoy. We go out on trips around the island talking about politics, taking part in debates, and like spending time with people we share the same passions. We have lots of fun, and it's space for us to talk about things that are important to us and practice our skills.
I am Nixon, and on the 24th of February, I went to an event at Krabi where all the schools were invited to send 2 representatives for Year 6. We talked about what issues were affecting people in Year 6, what we would like to see change in Jersey, and what we want the adults to prioritise. Here's a video compilation of what we discussed.
Here is around 5 years, we know what from us. We don't because sometimes it feels safe. Yeah, so these are some of our aims. To bring cleaner buses to you, to have a key stage to only bus, to have special quiet buses for children with special needs, and to have spacious buses when they're very packed. We've done recycling in every parish because some people say they don't have recycling in them. But we should be electric cars because gas cars can infuse the air, and much people don't have a long capacity which is short in the space of range. And much every time I just see a big man on the side of the road. That's where we see food. Because there's some people that live on the streets and so they have to see people that don't live like that. So another thing that affects children is peer pressure. So, inflation. This is a very big problem passing the island, but also people have more activities in Jersey. There's not much fun places to go for older kids. So there should be more activities for a less expensive prices. There's lots of places but I am from England, So children are kind of just glued to their screens.
What would you try to make better? More kind people in Jersey and more activities. So what activities would you like to see in the island?
I would quite like to see a water park. I don't see more like oceans or like kayak. I'd probably see like more like shooting things around, some children have they need fishes to focus, and some teachers don't have fishes to give students. Some kids with disability can't use our maps and they need to use the map. Some teachers don't give kids with disability a brain break so they can think about the courses they are in or different subjects, because sometimes you do like the same subject over and over again. You should have another break time in 7 hours of school, and we have like an hour break. Basically, in our school, there's a lot of variety of sports, more computer lessons, so it's quite a few jobs because we're all going to computers. So all of this that's being said is really important. But also it can't happen if there's no planet to go with it. We thought maybe some solutions to this with teaching young kids like us about this so they're aware.
Yeah, and how will you convince others that you will be able to do this?
One thing, because we taught enough people and get enough people help that I think people are going to relate, not just me, but lots of people. My idea would be to send this to the government and see what they think about it, and I think you also can do what you want.
Right, so is that it, or is it frozen? That was it?
No, there's more to come.
My name is Manita, and I think some of the issues affecting young people in Jersey is that buses are becoming more unsafe, loud, and overall boring. So at Little Parliament Day, most of the children say that buses are one of the many things affecting kids in Year 6. There have been reports of vomit and litter on the floor of buses, and children younger than us have been picking up vapes/cigarettes and putting them in their mouths. We thought about Key Stage 2 early buses and quiet buses for people who have mental and physical disabilities, and would love your support in achieving this.
My name is Emily, and I would really like more activities and facilities for young people. As you saw in the video, lots of us feel that there isn't as much to do as we want this to change. People have suggested having a water park. We were also very concerned about the cost of things, which impact many families. Thank you for having us along. It is really important to us that we have the space to have our voices heard. We hope that we will be able to join the Youth Parliament and we'll come back here again.
Thank you very much indeed. Amelia, Nixon, Nito and Emily, that was great, and lots of ideas that I know are very thought-provoking. So thank you for that presentation. Grant. I think we now have a presentation from the Youth Parliament, and I call upon them to make the presentation.
Good afternoon, dear members of the State Chamber. We are here this afternoon to discuss our 4 campaigns. These are Right to Play, Housing, Diversity and Inclusion, and our new campaign that we have created, Teenage Barometer. During this, we shall be giving our 3rd and final presentation on our campaigns, and we will also be talking about the surveys we had teenagers and adults complete based around the opinion of teenagers and how teenagers think they are viewed. We have spent some time reflecting on the past 18 months, considering the highlights and some frustrations. We all have really enjoyed having the opportunity to present in the States Chamber, and it has helped us develop our communication, public speaking, teamwork, organisation and confidence. Another highlight has been the numerous residentials, including Crabbe, Chateau Vermont and St Albans Fort. These have been great fun and allowed us to develop friendships that we have helped with our work.
We have all had our own challenges to overcome that have included a fear of public speaking, working with new and unfamiliar people, juggling JYP commitments with school and the difficult challenge of writing speeches. A big moment for JYP was being invited to be the first young people to speak at the British Irish Council Summit in June. Being invited made us feel important, and there were some people there that really did take the time to speak with us, including an official from the Scottish Parliament and the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford. It was a great experience for us, but we did at times feel like puppets and that we were just there for people to look at us. We are not really sure that we were listened to and that our words were acted upon. This is something that has frustrated us throughout our time. We have made a lot of recommendations over our 18-month term, and things haven't been acted upon. As a group, we do not feel like we have always been listened to, and hope that following on from today, you will try and do some of our recommendations.
Through carrying out our research and speaking with other young people, there are some things that have really surprised us. We were sad to discover that in the beginning that every parish does not have a park. We think that every child should live in a walking distance to a park, and it really frustrates us that St Clement's still does not have a public park for children, even though it is the 4th biggest parish by population. We have been so happy to hear of the new park being built in St Martin's, as when we started, they didn't have a public park for children. Another thing that really surprised us was how many vacant houses there are in Jersey. In the recent census, it was said that 4,000 out of 48,600 homes are vacant. We hope that there will be some steps to reduce this so that everyone in Jersey has a place to live.
When we did our survey for the BIC Summit, we found out that 90% of respondents either didn't see a future or unsure if they saw a future in Jersey. As a group, we have mixed feelings about whether we will stay in Jersey, but it does make us sad that Jersey could end up with an older population.
We have had the opportunity to meet young people from different places twice, as we hosted the Guernsey Youth Forum for a fun activity day in November, and also some of us went to London to attend YouthCon, hosted by the British Youth Council. We think it is really important to link with other young people to give us a different perspective, and we still speak with some of the young people we met. When we spent time with the people from Guernsey, we learned that they have similar issues to us, but Jersey is more expensive. The young people from Guernsey said that they thought Jersey felt more diverse. We took them to different places around the island, and they told us that they have nothing like we have in Jersey. We think we don't have anything to do, but they really don't. It did make us feel more grateful for our island after their visit.
When we went to YouthCon, people didn't know about Jersey and were shocked we had to get a plane. By attending events like this, we can educate people about Jersey. The key topic we discussed was free school lunches, which is an issue that is important in Jersey as well. Food is really expensive within our schools, and the cost and variety really differs from one school to the other, which we have learnt from sharing our own experiences. We don't think that it is fair that a meal deal is cheaper in some shops in town than in some schools, even when you get less food out of it. Attending YouthCon has made us more aware of these challenges.
We hope that the government will support future joined-up work and can help us develop stronger links with other places, as it is really important to get ideas from others. We would have loved to meet other youth parliaments from Wales and Scotland in order to better our skills in communication and learn experience for other people in the UK. These experiences with other young people could benefit Jersey, as we could learn from different regimes that have included young people and proved to be better than our current ones. We should have had this opportunity to speak at the UK Youth Parliament, and we feel let down that this opportunity wasn't offered to JYP. We really hope that JYP can join UK Youth Parliament and will be included in future, and we would like your help with this. We are going to now share some things about our 3 campaigns. First up is the Right to Play.
Our campaign over the last 18 months has been advocating for the child's right to play to be more significant in Jersey, which is Article 31 of the UNCRC. Our right to play is a vital endeavour aimed at recognising the significance of play in a child's development. Play is not only a source of joy, but also essential for cognitive, social and emotional growth. By advocating for policies that prioritise and incorporate opportunities for play in society, We can ensure that every child has the chance to explore, learn and develop to their fullest potential. This campaign seeks to create inclusive spaces, promote access to safe playgrounds and emphasise the importance of unstructured playtime in schools and communities. By integrating the right to play into our societal framework, we can foster healthier, happier and more resilient generations.
Over the past 18 months, we have worked very hard progressing the campaign, going from a campaign with complete strangers to contributing to the development of a park, making new friends, and meeting and learning from new people to gain new, different perspectives. Our contributions helped build St. Martin's Park, which is also inclusive and an accessible park. Furthermore, we have gathered data from multiple different surveys to help us better our understanding of the lack of both facilities and activities for the youth of Jersey. Our main priorities for action includes making a social and accepted space for the youth of the island, improving the parks. This includes the building of the accessible swing in St. Martin's Park and having more free activities for teenagers.
One thing that we would really like to have is free or very heavily discounted entry to the sports centres. We would also like to see more action in the future in improving school facilities instead of buying new things and making better use of school buildings, such as leaving the gates open for school football pitches for teenagers to use free of charge instead of leaving them untouched. This scheme would help to introduce the concept of community schools to the island. Community schools would be so beneficial, and we hope Richard Vibert takes up this ongoing project and carries on Ina Gardner's previous work. We would also like more affordable places to eat and hang out, action on the attitudes of older people towards younger people, which has been so influential. We have focused on this as a whole group for the final few months. We hope that you have spent some time looking over reports from our previous presentations. We are particularly proud of our Rate My Park section and really hope that it will be used for you when planning new parks.
We have also had some personal growth and achievements that we are very proud of, such as gaining confidence, learning new things, making new friends, being able to ask for help when needed, overcoming fears, and many more. On reflection of our campaign, we are feeling awesome, but there is still a long way to go. We will now pass over to the housing group.
Over a course of 18 months, whilst working on our campaign, we have learned about the problems rising related to housing prices, such as inflation and tenancy laws. The root cause of all these problems were housing prices increasing at an alarming rate. To present our ideas, we have spoken at the States Chamber twice, attended and spoken at the British Irish Council Summit, and spoken to Andiam homes and ministers. We also prepared surveys. Through this, we gathered important data and found out some captivating statistics. For example, in our survey, we discovered that over 90% of young people in Jersey are unsure of living here due to high inflation rates and housing prices. We also learned that the minimum wage in Jersey is currently £11.64 per hour. However, the cost to simply rent a one-bedroom flat in Jersey ranges between £1,000 to £1,700 per month.
We are proud to have gathered the voices of young people that we have shared with you on the important issue of housing, as it is vital that young people are considered in all discussions. Our surveys have also made headlines in the local press, which we are grateful for. We were pleased to hear that the waterfront development got turned down after we put in an objection into planning and spoke at the public consultation. As we have said before, we don't want more one-bedroom flats. We want houses for people to live in. We would like to see young people included earlier in planning applications and have young people be involved in the design of big projects that will impact them. There are some good examples from in the UK of where this has happened, and we will link these in the report we will do. During the June of 2023, a few members from the Jersey Youth Parliament, including some from the Housing Group, attended and presented a speech at the British Irish Council Summit to various ministers. We felt that our ideas were mostly considered. The big summit was a great experience where the members learnt more about what is being done to help the current housing problem and how we as young people can aid to put a stop to this ongoing crisis. Although we have achieved so much during the past 18 months as a group, we believe that there is so much left to be done, so it'd be important to us that the future of JYP can recognise the importance of the housing crisis in Jersey and how much it affects everyone on the island.
Analogously, it would be good to hear about the progress from the next group of young people who partake in this amazing experience. In conclusion, when we first started JYP, we believed that housing should be more accessible for those who can't afford a house, which lines up with the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child in Article 27. We still feel that this is important and it should continue further in other Jersey youth parliaments. A future without affordable housing is not a future for Jersey. Thank you for listening. We will now pass you over to Diversity and Inclusion Group.
Our aim was to promote an inclusive, safe island for young people. We have been promoting this for the past 18 months and are very pleased with the progress that has been made. In the beginning, we spoke about the Sunflower Lanyard scheme and how it had been abused during lockdown, with the lanyards being remade into mask exemptions. We are so pleased to see more shops showing the poster and welcoming people that use the lanyards. We hope that this awareness will grow. We support quiet hours in shops and hope this will also spread to more shops. People on Little Parliament suggested having quiet hours on buses to support people with sensory needs, and we really like this idea. Maybe on double deckers, the top floor could be for chatting and the downstairs for quiet. We also like the idea that these hours could be renamed to accessible hours, because it's not just turning down the music, but also dimming the light.
We spent some time making an information booklet for parents about the LGBTQ+ community. This is on our website and we hope that people have found it useful. We have asked lots of questions about accessibility and we will be asking these again at the end of the presentation. We also discussed the building of unisex single-stalled bathrooms which have their own sinks, toilets, etc., made with the idea that it would make trans people feel more comfortable in bathrooms. Transgender youth may feel uncomfortable in gendered bathrooms. This is because some people do not identify with binary gender identities such as male or female. Trans people may also feel uncomfortable in gendered bathrooms if they have to go to the bathroom with the gender that they were assigned at birth, which can be bad for the mental health and self-image of the individual.
After our last presentations in the States Chamber, it was spoken about that the new government HQ is going to be built to be more accessible and inclusive. This was answered by Deputy June as they talked about the plan for a new government building. We thought the ideas that were brought up were amazing and would really improve the accessibility on the island. We are very happy that these changes are being made and are hoping to get an update soon about how those ideas have been put in place. As a group, we will now continue to campaign for diversity and inclusion.
After our last presentation, we came together as a group to discuss how we could spend the final few months. We discussed how our campaigns all link up. One discussion that we had was about places to play, in particular around places where people live. We identified that a lot of parks had signs saying no ball games, which made us feel angry. We felt it defeats the point of a park, as they should be a place for children to play, to just be children and to be able to learn from mistakes. We understand that in small parks and ones very close to houses that there may be a need for restriction, but new developments should take this into consideration and have spaces to play away from windows.
We then got into the topic of what places we felt welcome and realised this links to all three campaigns and something we felt that all teenagers are affected by. What people think of them, people's bad opinions on teenagers impact where they can play and the options available. We want teenagers to feel included in plans for several accounts from the youth parliament members and outside source. Teenagers don't feel welcome in places run by adults such as town or places full of small children like parks. This creates very little space for teenagers as no place is really full fully admitted at teenagers. One example of this is in shops in St. Heliers, as lots feel that they are getting judged and nearly pushed out of the store because they are teenagers and they have no place to be there. We thought of gathering data from the wider community about teenagers. This idea has become known as the Teenage Social Barometer, and we have been working on it as our newest campaign.
We feel like Jersey's discrimination law, where age is a protected characteristic, is not helping no matter what happens. We get treated unfairly for being a teenager. This is because of our age and how there are unfair views on teenagers due to only a small percentage acting truant. Then this reflects on all teenagers, which if you look at it, the facts is incredibly biased. People are focused on the around 10% of teenagers instead of the other 90%. What if we did the same with adults and assumed that everyone is bad because of the small minority that committed crimes and go to prison? If you put yourself in a teenager's point of view, how would you react?
In late February this year, Poppy Kirk, a member of Jersey Youth Parliament, along with the ideas of other members, created a survey outlining the problems with the perception of teenagers in public spaces. 2 surveys were made, one for adults and one for teenagers. The surveys were anonymous to ensure accurate and fair results. They both include similar questions that were slightly altered to fit the audience, therefore getting a better idea of the opinion of the respondents. We feel that over the years, many stereotypes around teenagers have been made from data that we have collected from a survey. We conclude that 66% of young people that responded felt they are viewed negatively by adults in public spaces. One respondent said, we are viewed as disrespectful and rude, and another said, not all of us get up to bad things.
The teenagers survey was mostly responded to by 13 to 17-year-olds, and 90% of them stated they had siblings. 100% of the respondents agree that adults react negatively towards teenagers in public spaces, and the majority of respondents put that there is a negative bias towards males and all large groups. A shocking 95% of respondents agreed that they feel that adults perceive them negatively and that they feel unwanted. We feel that this data is particularly concerning as it negatively affects daily life for teens. In our survey, teens expressed their feelings of disinterest, negativity, and being unwanted in public spaces by adults. This answer extended to the 83% of respondents that felt adults needed to be informed that teenagers are, mostly, not performing illegal or otherwise negative activities in their free time. Respondents stated that they felt adults judged them in public spaces, with many stating that they felt that they didn't belong, or that they felt the spaces they enjoyed frequenting didn't accommodate teenagers. On the studies of the Right to Play group, 40% of respondents agreed that parks were not aimed at or designed for teenagers. This reinforces aggressive or unhappy emotion within teens and furthers the negative stereotyping of teenagers. Only 4% of respondents felt that parks were, in fact, designed for teenagers. We followed this survey up with a similar survey aimed at adults to see how a wide range of people react to teenagers in public. To a question about general opinions of teenagers in public spaces, most of the respondents expressed that they are usually well behaved, but a few mentioned that teenagers need more places to go. In a follow-up question asking if adults have any negative feelings towards teenagers, most mentioned that the size of the group made a difference to their overall opinions, with an extreme negative bias for large groups. For example, one adult said fear of intimidating groups, of potential aggressive interaction, or fear of verbal conflict, and another, I just feel a bit anxious around large groups making a lot of noise. Interestingly, from the response, it is clear adults find large groups of teenagers in town more intimidating than large groups in other places, for example, the beach. Adults said that they most commonly saw teens in descending order: town, their workplace, entertainment facilities, beaches, and youth clubs. Interestingly, adults reported that they least commonly saw teenagers in nature settings, where teens stated that nature settings were one of their most common sites to frequent, alongside town. It was noted that 55% of the responders' children do not go or do not want to go to youth clubs. The service, it is noted, is not suitable for everyone by no fault of the youth service itself. It was noted that 100% of the adult respondents that agreed that teenagers' actions and behaviour in parks is beneficial to themselves or the community had teenage children of their own. This suggests that the negative stereotyping of teenagers is believed by those who have no evidence to suggest otherwise. It is these opinions based on a small minority of teenagers that cause stereotypes to be made about all teenagers. These stereotypes can have a negative impact on teenagers and limit the number of opportunities available for them. According to the most recent census, there are 10,532 young people in Jersey aged between 10 and 19 years old. Last week, the Bailiwick Express published an article explaining how 10 young people in Jersey were responsible for almost half of youth crime in the island. This is obviously a very difficult situation for the emergency services, the community, and these young people themselves. And we hope that with the right support and joined up working from appropriate agencies, that these young people can receive what it is that they need to help them to refrain from offending. This article does go some way to demonstrating how low the number of teenagers responsible for crime or antisocial behaviour are in the island, and we would like to see states members promote information like this and engage in providing the public with information about how valuable teenagers are to the community around them. For example, there are twice the number of youth parliament members as there are young people highlighted as being responsible for half of recent youth crime. We are also teenagers who have committed to attempting to impact our community positively as representatives of the young people of the island. We would like to ensure that we have offered the opportunity to give an option as a young person in Jersey by way of surveys and consultations with young people, so that we can confidently know that we are speaking on behalf of those who wish to be heard. And teenagers would like you to know that they are misrepresented and misunderstood, and the responsibility to challenge these assumptions of their character or behaviour also lies with you.
These findings are linked with violence against women and girls, shortened to VAUG report. More than 40% of girls surveyed aged 16 to 17 had experienced VAUG, and gender inequality is a key driver. A woman was even told by her doctor after experiencing an assault that going for a good walk would clear her head. We believe that this behaviour is unacceptable and needs to be stopped. We learned that the main problems that influence VAUG are culture that promotes gender inequality and misogynistic attitudes, poor understanding of VAUG, low levels of trust and accountability, range of barriers that limit our capacity to respond to VAUG. There are lots of links with VAUG and all our campaigns. Key recommendations we support from the report are: a campaign to tackle street harassment should be rolled out across St. Helier. A stronger police presence should be introduced in Cheapside, Parade Gardens, Belmont Road, and Snow Hill. Dedicated support for rough sleepers should be introduced in Parade Gardens. Better lighting at Snow Hill. This is also backed up by members of the Little Parliament saying they wanted more police in town as it didn't feel safe. Number 25. Non-fatal strangulation should be named as a standalone offence. Guidance on the evidentiary basis for proving non-fatal strangulation should be issued alongside the offence. Stalking should be named as an offence in Jersey regulation. SIPE should work closely with Dewberry House Sexual Assault Referral Centre, Jersey Action Against Rape, and Jersey Domestic Abuse Support to promote better awareness of these services within schools and other sites for young people. SIPE should consider rolling out a whole-of-school approach across schools. Professionals working with young people in educational settings should receive bystander training to develop a culture of vigilance, challenge, and high standards of gender equality and safety. Schools should work with students to develop a Bill of Rights which is explicit in describing what is acceptable behaviour. There's a charity called Make Space for Girls in the UK, which focuses on having teenage girls' voices when public spaces are being designed.
Teenage girls are often overlooked or simply aren't there when it comes to big decisions and plans, which leads to the needs of teenage girls not being met even in newer public spaces. We think this charity is amazing as it highlights problems that aren't talked about enough or not talked about at all.
We have looked through the public voice common ground analysis and found the feedback really interesting, and noticed that it complements what we have been saying. 79% of respondents wanted more trees. 71% of respondents wanted more space to hang out, sit, or walk with no agenda. This ties in with our right to play findings. 60% of the respondents wanted more entertainment, such as music, outdoor film, and performance. We came across a report from Scotland called Teenager in Public Spaces Final Report by Dr. Jenny Wood and Dr. Jamie Hamilton from 2022. In the Scottish study, it was noted that children in rural environments where the stereotype is one of more carefree and peaceful living had restrictions on their activity from poor public transport and limited leisure options. Children in the city, where the stereotype is one of danger and corruption of children, had increased, quote, protection. This limited personal mobility and the potential range of negative effects on both adults and children, such as increased mental and physical health difficulties.
In the report, they identify that teenagers are often overlooked when designing public spaces in towns, cities, and the countryside. In this report, they highlight the reasons that young people might not feel welcome or safe in public spaces, and or might feel that like they're part of the wider community. We would encourage states members to read this report and possibly conduct a similar report with the young people in Jersey to this level of honest participation and inclusion. We think that this report is a fantastic example of how states members should be interacting with young people.
With so many people saying the same thing, we really do hope that you will listen and take steps to improve the life of islanders in Jersey. Having taken all these ideas into consideration, we have 3 key priorities that we want to leave you with today. Prices of activities must stop rising, or most young people in the island will leave if given the chance. Housing prices must also come into play here. When we can't afford housing, only those who already have houses will stay, resulting in an ageing population. Finally, as a group, we feel that opportunities for activities has to and should increase, or population will decrease, with more young people finding cheaper and suitable accommodation elsewhere.
Though these are our main points, we would appreciate you taking action on the following. Putting a park in every parish, as this is a minimum of what you can do for play in each parish. Everyone in the island should have a suitable home in accordance to the rights of a child. Accessibility should be considered in every part of the design process. And new buildings should have no excuse to discriminate against those with disabilities, hidden or not. Every young person should have a park in a walking distance of 5 minutes.
We think the Youth Parliament is a really good idea and a great way to get young people's voices heard, but not enough has been done to actually act on what we say. This is not fair, as we have spent 18 months trying to get voices of young people heard. We have experienced previous ministers giving indirect answers to questions with vague answers and lack of actual content, especially on the campaigns of housing and diversity and inclusion. Please listen to us and ensure that not only our voices are heard, but all young people's voices in Jersey are listened to and acted on. We hope that this presentation will have a positive effect on Jersey and that it will aid young islanders' voices being heard. Thank you for listening.
The foot stamp from there is what we do instead of rounds of applause. So that's what that means. So well done and congratulations on that set of recommendations and on the report. That was really very interesting. There's a lot, hugely, I know, that members are going to want to think about. And of course, you have exactly the right people sitting here listening to what you've said, because they are responsible for pretty much all of the areas that your recommendations and requests have been directed towards. So thank you all very much indeed. Now, I think we move on now to questions submitted to the Youth Parliament by members. So I understand there are 3 questions, and I think that someone's going to read out the question and then there's going to be an answer. If I've got that right, shall we start with the first question?
We will now go on to answer the questions that we have received. Thank you to Deputy Gardner and Deputy Dublé for submitting questions to us. Deputy Gardiner has asked us, what do you think parish constables and deputies need to do to increase the participation of young people in parish life, including parish assemblies and committees? We had a big discussion about how things could be done better. We were going to include in our presentation, so we were glad that you have asked. Our ideas are: ask us. We don't have knowledge about the parish assemblies and committees. It is not something we learn about at school. Spread more information. We are not properly informed about these committees and assemblies. Please take into account your audiences. Use words we understand and no acronyms. Please don't waffle. We really want the information and we really don't want anything else. We think that all state members should have lessons on how to engage with young people and know about the Jersey participation standards. We often give our thoughts about things, but then never hear back about how it will make an impact. So it's really important that you have a plan about how our input will make a difference and how you will tell us that it has. Young person versions of things would really help. We need visuals, graphics, and colour. Short videos are good. These should be advertised in spaces we look and not just stored on websites as we won't see them. Schools, in the lunch line, TVs, put in place where we are, and bus stops outside of the buses. Promote in particular opportunities that are aimed at or will impact young people. Visit us in schools so we feel like you actually care about us. If you want us to engage with you, you need to come and engage with us. Ella attended the St. Clement's parish meeting and she felt scared. Only old people there complaining about traffic and roads, and that is not engaging or interesting for us. We would like to know what the State Assembly thinks, and we will be asking this when we move on to our chance for questions.
Deputy Dublé asked us, have the Youth Parliament had assistance in distributing their excellent LGBTQ+ guide? Are there any ways in which they think this could reach more parents or other adults in our community? What else do they think could be done to help families have these conversations in a well-informed and supportive manner? So far, we've had no assistance outside of the youth service in the distribution of our guide. We thought we could make QR codes for our social media and perhaps posters for youth clubs. We also had suggestions to send a digital copy to schools for them to distribute if they wish. We could support families by referring to them to the Jersey Youth Service, or could suggest they do some research online. We could also ask if the JEP would write an article both for support and to spread the guide. We may also ask if the official government website may put up the guide and some advice. We would love it if you could share it with anyone you know.
Deputy Rob Ward asked us, what are your opinions on current play and youth facilities in St Helier, and what do you believe is needed to improve for these children and young people? We don't think that there is enough for people our age to do. We have a lot of information in our Rights to Play report and have included suggestions from other young people we spoke to within that. Some suggestions were schools to be open so that we can use them to play on the football pitches and facilities after school. Free accesses to sports centres, maybe like a £20 pass like buses. Parks aimed at older children. We have done Rate My Park activity, which are also in our report, and we would like things like zip lines, climbing walls, outdoor fitness equipment, somewhere to hang out with a roof or to shelter when it's raining. It would really help if the public attitudes towards teenagers would change so that we feel welcome in public places. In our first survey, someone commented, we are always told to move on and never feel welcome. So we really all are just wanting to feel welcome and accepted into society. We now have some questions that we would like to ask the ministers.
Well, thank you all very much indeed for those answers to the questions that you've been asked. Now, the time has come for questions from Parliament members to ministers. And the first question comes from Poppy, who will ask a question of the Minister for Children and Families.
Children's Minister, you voted against extending the existing bus pass scheme to age 21 and under, and also voted against free GP visits for all full-time students. Have your opinions changed now that you are Children's Minister?
Thank you for that question.
and I commend you for looking at my voting record. So on both those instances, if you look at the positions I held at that time, I was both the Assistant Minister for Children and Education and the Assistant Minister for Treasury and Resources. And as such, as in can quite often be a case, there was a conflict between the two. However, on the question of the bus pass, this was one of the amendments in the Government Plan 2024 to 2027, and it asked to extend the existing £20 per annum bus scheme to everyone 21 years of age and under. Under the existing scheme, people 18 and under are entitled to a £20 Avanci card. And it is correct that along with 28 other members, I voted against the amendment and it was defeated. I voted against it as the Assistant Minister for Treasury and Resources because I strongly believed that such a scheme should be targeted. There are, of course, people between 18 and 21 who are in full-time education. There are other people who are on lower incomes. There are people who are part-time students. Should all those people be rated equally? If someone's already earning a significant salary, should they be entitled to a £20 bus pass? So my objection to that was not, in effect, the scheme itself, but the fact that it wasn't targeted to those that really needed help. I think that an untargeted scheme, if brought to the Assembly, I would have the same opinion, and I would look to people who bring such propositions to look at who really deserves help. The amount involved was not unsubstantial, approximately £1.5 million. You could consider that if funds, as this was an amendment, and funds for this amendment needed to be taken from somewhere else in the budget, that cutting 1.5 million from another part of the budget, which might affect, say, a children's park, could be better spent on that than on a scheme which wasn't targeted to those who really deserve the income, so the help. So that's my views on the bus pass scheme. Free GP visits for full-time students. Once again, this wasn't targeted. And again, I didn't support it, although it was successful in getting through the Assembly. The government doesn't have, as I said before, it doesn't have unlimited finances, and therefore we prioritise where we do spend the money. When we consider the full-time students involved, it included full-time students at other universities outside of Jersey, outside of the UK. In some cases, you will get people who are wealthy enough to decide that they can take a year out or more than a year out on full-time education to study in a subject that they're interested in. Does that person deserve a free GP visit? Again, I strongly believe in such schemes being targeted to those who actually need help. And that is my view. I think it's a fair view. I think that the current scheme, where those under 18 benefit from free GP visits, is something that I did vote for, but I could not vote for the extension to full-time students, and I rest there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, we have a little bit of time if people want to ask a question of the Minister arising out of that, called a supplemental question. So you've heard the Minister's answer. Bobby.
Thank you. Where you said it was untargeted, that includes people who have the finances to pay for it themselves. But as somebody who has experience before getting an Avanci card, going on the bus every day to go to places after school, it is very unsustainable and I could not afford it after a while. How do you propose that, because it's untargeted and your argument is that it supports people who can afford it, how do you propose to help people who cannot afford it and bus is their only means of travel?
Right, good question. So I would look at a scheme such as this. I would look, for instance, at people who are already need support, perhaps those on income support, those who are not in employment and perhaps aren't students, those who are part-time students and on very low incomes. And I would seek to help those people and not people who could, as I said before, people who can afford to pay for a GP visit. I think that's unfair, but I am very much in favour of supporting people who need access to the health care system and who need help to do so.
Got time for another supplemental question, if anyone? Do you want to put your light on? The way you say you want to ask questions, put your light on. Okay? We'll take Nixon first.
Mr. Child Minister, someone before said about buses being sometimes unsafe. Who would want to pay for a dirty, unsafe bus? That's basically all I'm going to say.
Right, well, I certainly wouldn't want to pay for a dirty bus. And I think that that's something that we have to take up with the company that runs the bus service on our behalf, because if there are buses that are in that condition, then that isn't acceptable. You know, I thank you very much for raising that. I haven't personally been on a bus that was in that state, but I can believe that it does occur on occasions, and I think it's something that we have to look at. So thank you very much.
We'll have Monita, then we'll have Emily, then we have to move on to the next question after that. So Monita first.
With Nixon's idea of if you would want to go, if you would or would not like to go on a dirty bus, why would you like waste money? Because with Nixon's idea and with everyone else's idea at Parliament Day, we did a vote, and that we all voted that was one of the many problems affecting us young people, and we had a very thorough discussion. The group who wanted to make change with buses, we had a very thorough discussion on why people shouldn't pay for disgusting buses. So how would you change the buses? Like, how would you help with how would you help with all the commotion and the disgusting things going on the buses?
So can you add anything more to your previous answer?
Well, okay, I don't think anybody should have to accept buses that are either dirty or where there's antisocial behaviour. And I do think that that's something that we need to speak to the company that runs the buses. And that is the method by which we can do something about it. I think we put considerable amount of money into that service, and I think that we have a right to have clean buses. No one should have to pay or get on a bus that's dirty or where there's unacceptable behaviour. And so hopefully we can try and address that.
Okay, final question, Emily, on this.
It's not a question, but building on Nixon's idea, Who would want to go on a dirty, disgusting bus? When Minita said there was vomit and litter on the floor, and buses, I had an idea just now that I just had a light bulb. Maybe we should, once the bus driver had their shift, there should be like a little gap for the bus cleaner to clean the bus after what happened, his shift, and then the next the bus driver can do, and then people with disabilities would have a nice tidy bus, and if they didn't have a tidy bus, they would probably get anxious and distressed.
It's a call for action, and therefore
Yes,
I think
you're completely right, that if a bus is dirty, then when that comes back into the bus depot, it shouldn't go out again until it's cleaned. So I think that's an excellent idea, and I think it's something that we need to speak to them about, because if the bus goes straight out when it's dirty, then that isn't acceptable. So I thank you for your question.
Very well, we now come on to the second question that Cassie will ask of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Cassie.
We supported the community schools approach that the past Minister, Ina Gardiner, supported. How do you feel about this, and is there an update on it?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the member for the question. Yes, I do support that. I think it's a good idea. And schools are integral to our community, and all of us are, even when I went to school in East London, I was very proud of my school, and I'm sure there's a great deal of pride in all of you in your school. But they're much more important than that, because they serve as a central place in our communities where people meet, and there's a facility there that could be used wider. You've already mentioned about opening schools so that playgrounds are accessible. I think that's a very good idea. They have to be made sure they're maintained, and they have to be safe, of course, but that's a good idea. We also see preschool clubs, breakfast clubs, we see after-school clubs, and certainly I see in the school near me, during the summer holidays and the holidays, there are lots of clubs that go on, and on Saturday mornings. And exactly that type of community use, the wider community that live around those schools, is really, really important for us to use those facilities the best we can. And there's two really big reasons for that. One is that you feel at home in your school. So if there is something going on there, you're more likely to access it. If we can use that in the health area, so for example, you might have families more likely to access simple health facilities early on if they're based in schools at the right time. And the second thing is we already have these facilities built for us, so we can use them. And it means that some families won't have to go into different parts of the island perhaps to access the things that they need. So I'm very much a supporter of community schools because they're integral to our communities in general.
Is there a supplemental question? Does anyone want to ask a follow-up? Yes, follow-up question from you, Minita.
How would you feel if the school that you go to, you feel unsafe because some of the children who are not respecting each other, because my school, one of our core values is respect, and how would you change if children are feeling unsafe and their education is affected by that? How would you change that?
Thank you, and you're absolutely right. Every young person from year 1 to year upper sixth, as I would call it, year 13, should feel safe in their schools. And one of the important pieces of work that we have to do together is to make sure that you feel safe, and so that everybody else, when they go to their school. One of the things about school communities, and I think there's a question on bullying later, so I'll deal with that then if that's okay. But one of the things about community schools is they become more valued in that area. And when you value that place, it becomes a place that is special to everyone, so you know how to behave. I always thought when I was at school, it's a bit like going to church. Children always know how to behave when they go to church. They behave in a particular way. And whether religious or not, and I'm not particularly, if we treat our school's environment as a sort of important place like a church, then we all know how to behave in them. And I'm really pleased to hear that one of your school's main values is to respect each other, because if we all do that, I think we'll be in a better place on this island.
Cassie.
In new developments for community schools, will young people be included in those decisions, and how will you do that?
Yes, thank you, sir. And I really do thank you for this question, because as we develop a new school in the centre of St Helier, which is so much needed, one of the parts of that project is to include young people in its design. And I think that's really important, because you get ownership of that new building, and that new building can be so integral to that area. It will provide facilities that we need. It will provide enough space for our young people in the centre of St Helier, play space, breakout rooms, spaces so that you can learn in the way that you know you want to. And it provides an opportunity for young people early on to have the best possible facilities. And that says one thing, I think, from government, is that we value the young people coming through. And if we can do that, and we can do that in conjunction with you, that's a much better way to do it. And then that value that we talked about and respect earlier, that will be integral right from the beginning of that school building.
There's time for one or two other supplemental questions, if anyone wants to ask one before we move on to the third question. No? Right, then we'll move on to the third question. And the third question, Declan will ask of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Declan.
Is the new PSHE curriculum, as suggested by the previous JYP, still planned to launch in September?
Thank you, sir. Forgive me, I've got a bit of a cough today, so I'm going to try not to cough through this. The answer is yes, it is. The PSC curriculum was not signed off by previous ministers, as there was a meeting that couldn't be attended and it needs sign-off. I attended a meeting last week of the PHSE curriculum group, and we are happy to be signing that off in the coming weeks and months, and so it should be in place very, very soon.
Cool. Any supplemental question to that? Gone. All right then. What I'm proposing to do is, if anyone wants to ask a question, a follow-up question to any minister who gives an answer, if you put your light on, I will write down your name in the order that the light goes on, and provided we have time, I'll call upon you to ask your question in just the same way as we do when there's a meeting of the Assembly. Okay. The fourth question then is from Storm, who will ask a question for the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Storm.
Is there an update on the bullying policies for schools?
Yeah, thank you, sir. So there is something called a counter-bullying policy in place and has been developed with Jersey schools. In addition, each school has their own anti-bullying policy in place, and there's training available for all staff in schools to support sessions for parents and students, and they're available through assemblies as well. That's the stock answer, but the reality is that bullying in schools still happens. And I was interested to look at the Jersey Children and Young People survey, which suggested that 21% of young people reported bullying, 29% of females and 21% of males expressed fear of going to school, at least sometimes because of bullying. I would state publicly to you that I don't want you or any of your friends and colleagues to be fearful of going to school because of bullying. And so it's an issue we have to address. The best ways to do that is, I believe, through that respect agenda that we've talked about already, and to ensure that when bullying happens, you feel safe to go and speak to somebody so that it can be addressed. And that is often really the bravest first step that you have to take as a young person, to say, I'm not happy with the situation and I want to help. It's actually something I think can continue into adulthood as well. There are too many adults, perhaps, who don't talk about their issues enough and go and ask for help. So I would encourage you to make sure that you go and speak to somebody for help. And if that help is not there, we'll do everything we can to make sure it's in place.
Okay. Caleb.
Will this new policy affect private schools as well as public schools around the island?
Yes, it absolutely would and should. The private schools do receive state's funding, and so therefore they have a link to the policies that are there. And I also don't think that any school would want to do anything other than have an effective policy. I don't like that word policy actually, because it's something that's just on a piece of paper, but an effective approach and action that's taken with bullying in schools. We all know that throughout your school life, and you don't always get everything right, although obviously I was perfect. I was the perfect student, never did anything wrong in my entire life. Apart from not telling the truth, perhaps. But we don't all get it right. But when you do make a mistake or you experience that, then you need to have a way out, and you need to have a way of dealing with that that's effective for everyone involved.
Poppy.
Is there any plan for additional training for adults or stricter punishment for bullies? As a person who's been bullied myself in my school time, over the years I've seen very little change in what punishment bullies have received, and I felt bullying has only gotten stricter. Is there any plan to reduce the effect of bullying generally?
Yes, thank you, sir. And I'm sorry to hear that you've actually encountered that experience, because that's not something I want to be happening in schools. I think the word punishment itself is something we need to look at when we talk about this. I think it's about responsibility for people. And I think people need to understand the responsibility of their actions on another human being. And I think that is perhaps sometimes the most powerful way of punishing somebody. You know, a detention, a suspension, etc., doesn't often deal with behaviour. What often changes behaviour is an understanding of the effect of your behaviour on someone else. And I think that's what we have to make sure that we do with young people, so that when their behaviours affect you or others, and there are many others, they understand the effect of that, and they understand that what they're doing to another human being is making their life unhappy. And that is not something that we should be doing as human beings to one another.
Very well, thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the next question that Storm will ask of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Did I miss that one? I'm sorry, did I read the wrong name out? There we are. Thank you, please, Maria. Yeah.
There was a place strategy being put together, but our feedback was that we want action, not just words. Is there an update on this?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part.
No, it's me. Oh.
I was on the
Right.
side.
No, you're all right, Rob. No, sorry about that. But when we had a recent vote of no confidence, the roles of the Minister for Children and Education was split. So we now have two ministers. I'm the Minister for Children and Families, and Deputy Rob Ward is the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. So that's why there's a little bit of confusion. Interestingly, neither of us is actually the minister responsible for the play strategy. But I'm quite more than happy to answer this question, because the play strategy came about in what's called the Bridging Island Plan, and proposal 29 of the Bridging Island Plan said the Minister for the Environment will work with the Minister for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, and a Minister for Children and Education to develop a play strategy. In fact, I think that it probably would now also incorporate the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. So it's probably split between four people. I hadn't previously been involved in this. However, I am more than happy to confirm my commitment to work with the Minister for Environment and the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development to develop a play strategy and planning guidance. It's interesting, I heard you earlier talk about parish assemblies and the government, and parish assemblies are completely separate from the island's government. What isn't always recognised is that the majority of play areas in the rural parishes, so outside of St Helier, are actually provided by the parishes and not the government. So the parishes have, I saw your review actually of my play area in St Peter, so thank you very much for visiting that. And I was very pleased that you spotted the neurodiversity board that I'd actually put up there, which is in multiple languages, and I think it was a very good addition. It was actually the first one in the island. But you were right that it was a small facility, and that's because parishes don't have access to the large sort of value funds that government has. So parishes have to raise their money through the parish rates, and we're only allowed to, I see Mark Capern, who's one of my parishioners, smiling. We're only allowed to raise the amount of money which we need each year. So therefore, if we want to build a play area, we have to sort of save up for it over a number of years and can only get so much out of the rates each year towards that. But I know Mark won't mind if we build a play area and his parish rates go up. Is that right, Mark? Thank you very much for that. And so I have absolute commitment to that. And in fact, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there are due to be 175 new houses built in St. Peter's. And it's only in the last 2 or 3 weeks that the developers who've now acquired that land have come to see me as constable. And I've been discussing with them their contribution towards play area. And I'm absolutely determined that those developments should fund a play area. We already have one for the younger children, which you've seen, but I think it's very important that there are facilities for the older children as well. And I come back to the parish assembly because often when creating something like that, we have to have a parish vote on it. And you're quite right, it's usually only old people at the parish assembly. And I think that we have ourselves to blame for that because we haven't promoted the assemblies in the past. And therefore, we only have the older people who are familiar with what they do. But they are important. So anyone here live in St. Peter's? Oh, not a single one, unfortunately. So it's down to Mark again.
No, actually, there's a hand up over there.
Oh, well, so I would encourage you to get your parents when things like it's publicised, it's on Facebook when we have assemblies. I'd encourage your parents, if something that's relevant to you is on the assembly, to encourage them to go, because that's the way to get your play areas outside of St Helier, because they very much are provided by the parishes. So what has happened so far? So a strategy group was set up with members from a range of departments, including those I've already mentioned. In May 2023, they met with the Youth Parliament, and you'd also undertaken some research of your own. The outcome so far is that a draft policy has been created, and it decided that a new additional officer was required to develop and implement the play strategy. I think it's still, unfortunately, to be decided where that and who pays for that additional officer, and there again it comes back to money. But I can say that the government, and this is the government rather than the parish, have plans to refurbish parks at Lake Kennebay, Millennium Park, Springfield and the Long Beach area, is that in Greville? Yes. Yes, I see the Constable of Greville Way, good guess. And then additionally, several of us constables, including myself, are looking at parish projects to either extend or create new play areas in their parishes. And that's work that's going on outside of the government. But a number of us are very committed to doing that. So is it part of the play strategy? Well, I think it is. The play strategy has influenced the constables to do that. And I welcome any further questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Minister. Any questions following on from that? Yes, Declan.
Is the strategy accessible? We found it and just had a lot of words. Have you considered different learners' needs?
What was that? Different learners' needs. I think that's very important. I don't know if you can sort of explain different learners' needs. Can you sort of?
Well, what I mean is people with different abilities, such as autism or
Okay.
ADHD?
Absolutely. So I'm subject that I'm interested in, and I don't know if I'm the only constable, but I worked with Society in Jersey to put up that first board aimed at neurodiverse young people in that small play area in St. Peter. And I absolutely would want to include all those people. You know, I think it's very important that that's done. And thank you for your question.
Does anyone else have a question for the Minister before we move on? No, very well. We move on to question 6 that Cassie will ask of the Minister for Education and Lifelong Learning. Cassie.
We previously recommended that every school should have an ARC. What do you think about this?
Thank you, sir, and thank you for this question. An ARC, an additional resource centre, is something that is provided to produce the highest level of support for some students who need that in school. At the moment, ARCs are focused in our 11 to 16 schools at Kenner Bay, Grainville, Hope Valley and Rockia, and a number of our primary schools. The question is whether they are necessary for all schools is a really good question, actually. One of the things I have in an answer that's written for me, and let's be controversial for a moment, is that actually we don't need ARCs in all schools. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And I would suggest that what is needed, that all schools share their provision for children with lots of different needs. And that may mean that schools all have additional resource centres to support children when they're having a difficult time in that school environment. And we have to think about all of the children in the school. You are obviously all very good students and want to learn, and you don't want a distraction from your learning. For some young people, that distraction is mainstream schooling, they're struggling. But with the right input and the right support at the right time, in the right position, we can get young people to be successful and perhaps get them back into those schools and working throughout.
Supplemental question, Cass?
All the schools you just read out were not private or semi-private schools. Is there any way that we can supplement these activities and help in private schools?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and I think what we need to recognise is that all schools need to provide a curriculum for all students. There has been, I think, a focus of need within the 11 to 16 schools because of the selective nature of our schools. And we have to look very carefully at that and look at the impact of that. That's why the additional resource centres tend to be in the 11 to 16 schools and in certain primary schools. But as I've said, as we learn more about the needs of young people, the neurodiverse needs of a range of our population, and we identify more, I think there will be more need for additional resource centres throughout our school. They might not be in the same form, they might be in a slightly different form, it might be smaller, there might be one particular area of a school, but I would suggest that yes, that's exactly the type of thing we need to do. Because anything that we can do in schools with young people to help them succeed is beneficial to us in the long term. And I think that's something we need to remember, that every penny that we spend in schools shouldn't be considered as a cost, in my opinion. It should be considered an investment. So if we invest in the right ways, then you guys will do really well later on. You earn lots and lots of money, and you pay my pension, which is the most important thing, perhaps.
Poppy.
If an ARC were to be implemented in all schools, how long do you think it would take to be completed?
Sorry, could you just repeat the first part?
If it were to be implemented, how long will it take?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that directly now. I think that's about understanding the need, understanding the growth of that need as we go through schools, the populations themselves. But what I will say is that schools are very good at identifying that and very good about being honest about what they need to do. And so I think it's the schools who lead the way on that. They'll come into pressure to my department and myself to say, look, we have this additional need, let's deal with it. But I'd certainly be open to that. And then I will take that to the Council of Ministers and say, this is a need that we have, and this is an investment we need to make, and that's what I'll be pushing for.
Any other questions for the Minister arising out of this particular one? No? All right, then we move on to question 7. That is it Isa will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Did I say that right?
It's Isa.
Isa, I apologise. Isa.
Can you update us on any progress that has been made about accessibility and inclusivity at the new government HQ? Do you have any pictures or artist impressions we could see?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and I thank the questioner for that question. So the government's Disability and Inclusion team have contributed to ensuring that the new office is fit for the diversity of its future inhabitants and considers the needs of employees and members of the public with a disability. The accessible sanitary facilities, changing place, lift access, horizontal circulation that includes wheelchair users, adjustable height desks and quiet spaces all show a level of planning that endorses the principles of the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of People with Disabilities. So they reflect a strategy that improves access, employment opportunities and information provided to disabled islanders whilst encouraging a more welcoming and considerate island culture around disability. The team, along with the local charity Liberate and other stakeholders, were given the opportunity to provide consideration for the design of the new office. The physical access is relatively straightforward to achieve in a new build. However, there are wider considerations that need a balanced approach, including some of the softer aspects, and what is being delivered is much more neurodiverse friendly than the original proposals. The Liberate audit was valuable and commended the design, but the D&I team also worked with an organisation called Hidden Disabilities, who count over 900 different conditions. Whilst the solution for one person might be a problem for another, and whilst the final product is never going to be perfect for everybody, there's enough flexibility within the design that it should be adequate. And so, yes, we do have drawings which we can circulate. Thank you.
Anyone want a follow-up question of the Minister for Infrastructure? Poppy.
Where would these artist impressions be delivered, and would they be available on social media for the wider public?
I've only received them today, sir, but I can arrange through the GREF to circulate them to members of the Youth Parliament ahead of them going to States members and the members of the public.
Any other questions for this Minister? No, in which case we come on to question 8 that Sharia will ask of the Minister for Housing.
How many houses that were identified as vacant are still vacant? How many vacant buildings are government owned?
Thank you for that question. Last year, the previous housing minister set up an empty home service where members of the public could report to the government when they believed they'd spotted homes that were empty for no good reason. In the first 6 months, there were 260 cases that were reported, of which 100 were investigated, and it was discovered that there were 132 properties among those investigations that were being unused for not particularly good reasons. When those cases were re-reviewed in October last year, it was found that 38 of them had been brought back into use or were in the process of being brought back into use, so they were being marketed or being refurbished. Of government-owned homes, at the beginning of the month, the number was 21 homes. Some of those are empty for good reasons because they are on a site that we're planning to redevelop at some point. So, for example, the hospital site is, the planned hospital site is one of those places. The old St Saviour's Hospital site is another one as well. I have been in office as Housing Minister for 6 weeks, so I wasn't involved in the establishing of the Empty Homes Service, but I have to say that I've found it very frustrating seeing so much emphasis on data collection and not enough emphasis on action to get empty homes back into use. which is why I'm looking forward in the next few weeks to having discussions with the parish constables to work out what we can do to identify those homes more quickly and put measures in place to incentivise them being put back into use, because we know Jersey has a severe housing crisis and it is unacceptable to have so many empty homes lying unused when there are so many families that would desperately benefit from being able to live in those homes.
Cassie.
With this approach, looking at just empty homes, could we use empty buildings as placeholders just for now to home these people and just improve the situation a little bit while more homes are being prepared?
So in cases where those homes are fit and safe to be lived in, then yes, I think we ought to do that. And I'm considering writing to the heads of government departments that have homes that are not being used at the moment to find out why they're not being used and see if there are solutions that can be found in the meantime. But it's fair to say that many of these homes won't be safe to live in because they've been allowed to become derelict for so long. And I think we have a very good home building programme through Andium Homes, our government-owned housing provider, and we have some sites that have been designated to build family homes on those as well. And I think we ought to be providing the best quality homes possible for people in Jersey at the most affordable prices possible. And so we ought to, I think, look at our own building programme to make sure that we can build as quickly as possible for those who need them. But if there are homes that are currently unsafe to live in, they probably won't be able to be brought back into use very quickly. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't consider that a long-term option as well to get as many of them back into use.
Any other questions for the Storm?
What if people don't live here and want to come out on holiday here? Have you considered any holiday homes that they can live in?
So that wouldn't necessarily fall to me, because my job is to make sure people who live in Jersey are housed properly. But for tourists coming to Jersey, that would be something that I think the Economic Development Minister would probably be more interested in. But we do have to be very careful that the homes we have in Jersey, we get the best use out of as possible, because we know that there are other places where their local communities have faced great difficulty because some people with homes going spare have realised that they can make more money by letting them out for short-term lets or on things like Airbnb, and haven't let them to families living in the local area when those homes might be better suited to that. And I know that there are issues in some parts of Wales and in Cornwall where there are lots of homes that are empty for prolonged periods of time because they're allocated for tourists rather than people in the area who are desperately struggling to afford a home. So I think there's a balance to strike on this, but it's absolutely vital that we ensure that Jersey families have good places to live.
Any other questions on this matter for this Minister? Poppy.
If many houses are given to tourism, such as Airbnbs, how would you plan to combat that if many are homeless?
So as it stands, we don't have any regulations at all on how things like Airbnb can work in Jersey. That's actually quite worrying because we don't know for definite that homes that are being let out on Airbnb and others are actually safe and professionally managed. So that's something that needs to be looked at. But again, that wouldn't fall to me as Minister to look at that, because my job is to make sure people in Jersey are housed rather than to regulate the tourism side of things. But that would certainly be something I'd be willing to raise with the Minister who is responsible for that.
We have one final question, Cassie.
In the recent Vogue report, there was something that said dedicated support will be given to rough sleepers in Parade Gardens. Is there any progress on that?
So I actually had a meeting last week about the Vogue report and what I need to be doing to proceed with implementing those recommendations, as that is something that this government has committed to do. We have some fantastic homelessness charities, including some that are based very closely to the Parade Gardens. It's fair to say that there isn't much, if any, rough sleeping in Parade Gardens itself. It's more likely to take place in car parks where it's covered. We know that the homelessness charities have been struggling, like many charities in Jersey, with fundraising. I have dedicated myself to ensure that I'm regularly meeting with those charities to provide them as much support as possible. But one of the things we desperately need to do, and we are doing, is building more affordable housing and working with government agencies to find the people who are most vulnerable in our community and help them into those homes and make sure that they get all of the wraparound support that they need, because people can become homeless for all sorts of reasons. Domestic violence can be one of those reasons, mental health problems, losing a job and so losing your income. So it's about more than just giving someone a set of keys and a home. It's also got to be about the wraparound support that we give them as well. And that is one of my top 3 priorities that I set when I took over as Minister for Housing, which is to address the plight of homelessness in our society, because we are a very wealthy society and we shouldn't have the levels of homelessness that we do here. We can do better than that.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. We come now to question 9 that Ella will ask of Deputy Binet, standing in for the Chief Minister.
What do you think could make young people stay in Jersey?
I'd like to thank the member for the question. So I think there are a number of ways in which we can encourage young people to stay over in Jersey. Firstly, by increasing the housing supply, because that will help to reduce both the purchase price of property and the cost of renting. In addition, we need to focus on bringing down the cost of living. And this would include initiatives like the introduction of the living wage and developing a more diverse economy, which should hopefully make new jobs more interesting than they are at the moment. It stands to reason that we need a very good health service, and of course a decent hospital will help. In addition to that, more sports facilities and recreation facilities, and I'm aware that our infrastructure minister here is currently doing a lot of good work in that regard, and hopefully there'll be some good news to come out in the next few months. There's currently a lot of reasons why people would want to stay in any event, insofar as Jersey's a lot safer than a lot of other places. We've got a decent countryside, we've got lovely beaches, but I fully accept that we've got to do more than that to encourage our young people to stay here.
Any follow-up question for Deputy Binet? Eleanor? Or is it Elena?
Eleanor. Do you worry about young people living in Jersey and like the statistics that we brought up earlier about leaving?
Yes, I certainly do. I think everybody in the Assembly is very worried about it. We've got an ageing population and we need more young people rather than less. So I think it's safe to say that we all recognise the problem and we're very keen to tackle it.
Any other questions for the Minister on this particular one? Okay, well then we'll move on to question 10. Lottie will ask of the Minister for Infrastructure. Lottie.
Will you support the idea of everyone being only a 5-minute walk from park?
Thank you, sir, and I thank the member for the question. So the provision of open space needs to be proportionate to the community served by it and provided in locations that are accessible. It's recognised that open spaces can serve a variety of functions and that local provision and specific needs are likely to vary in different parts of the island. So through the planning process, and particularly the Island Plan, we've already undertaken work to identify and to protect existing open space in the island, and we are working on a target in town of having access to open space within 6 minutes of everybody walking at 5 kilometres an hour. So the Island Plan sets out a policy framework that seeks to do a number of things related to the provision of access to open space. It protects existing open space, and its loss will only be permitted in exceptional circumstances. It requires large-scale development of 10 or more homes to provide adequate open space on site as an integral part of the development proposal, and it requires residential development of 5 or more homes to provide space for children to play on site. So we heard earlier about the fact there was no public park in St Clement. I can advise members that I'm meeting the Constable of St Clement on Thursday about a possible facility in that parish. I'm also working with the Planning Minister to make it easier for play areas to be identified, developed or redeveloped. Sir, I've heard, and I'm sure other colleagues have heard, loud and clear about the need to consult with youngsters when it comes to play spaces. Consultations are due later this year on the Millennium and Long Beach parks and will now include young people. Thank you.
Any follow-up question? Going once, going twice? Sold to no following questions. We then come to question 11 that Yasmin will ask again of Deputy Binet standing in for the Chief Minister.
Is there going to be an effort to advertise new government propositions that affect young people to young people? Have any members of the government made considerations about getting messages to young people, or have ministers attempted to communicate ideas with youth in the wider community?
So I thank the member for the question. It's clear that involving young people in decision making is vitally important for the future of the island. And I think young people should always feel that their voices are being heard. There are a number of ways that government can engage with children and young people. The Youth Parliament plays an important role, as does the Youth Assembly, and both give direct access to ministers of the government. Another vehicle for engagement is through the School Council Network. In addition, the State Assembly has set up a political awareness and education subcommittee whose specific role is to encourage an interest in politics and working with young people. I think the question initially asked if there was an effort to advertise new government propositions that affect young people, and I think possibly the most effective way to engage is simply by making better use of social media channels that younger people tend to use. Thank you, sir.
Any follow-up question? No? Very well, thank you. So we come on to, therefore, the final question that Isa will ask of the Minister for Health and Social Services.
What is actually happening about the hospital? Do you think it will be built before our youngest member, age 13, will turn 18?
5 years.
This is an interesting one. So, it's probably the case that some of the younger members here were born after the debate for a new hospital started. So I'm pleased to say that I think we've got a unity of purpose now amongst Assembly members. The site at Overdale is currently under demolition. I think we're halfway through the demolition process. That should be completed throughout this year. By June, July time, we should be ready to have a full business case and a set of plans ready to go to planning. If all goes well, the plans will be passed by Christmas. Let's just hope they are. After which, during the course of 2025, we'll have a contract in place with a developer, and construction should be underway towards the end of next year. So the simple answer to the question is yes, you should have that hospital ready by the time you're 18.
Cassie.
Do you think prolonged decisions like this make young people lose trust in the government?
Yes.
You can ask a supplemental. You could, for example, say, in what way? Does anyone else? Yes.
In what way?
Sorry, Minister.
I think the fact that it's been going on for 11 years probably speaks for itself.
Well, Kate.
Do you think the surrounding area would also need to be affected for the hospital, as the the roads around Overdale are known to be quite narrow for cars?
It's undoubted that there will be an effect on the surrounding area, but it's likely to be a lot less than it would otherwise have been under the old Our Hospital programme, because if my understanding is correct, 90% of the footfall that would have gone to the Overdale under the Our Hospital proposal is now going to stay in town at Gloucester Street in Kensington Place.
Isa.
Why has it taken so long?
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but can someone else tell me?
I think what the Minister is saying is that that's a very complicated answer, and it will require something of a history lesson, I suspect, which will outside, I think, the realms of what we can do. Poppy.
If there are no funds already going towards the development of a new hospital, would funds be taken away from other places?
No, the intention isn't to take funding from elsewhere. The Treasury are working on a programme of funding that they'll be developing over the course of the next 6 months, but there isn't an intention to take money from elsewhere.
Are there any other questions to the Minister? Well, then I think that brings this particular session to an end. I just think I'll take a couple of points, if I may. This is the final sitting of the Youth Parliament, and I think genuinely you can all be really, really proud of the contributions that you've made over the last 18 months, and I hope you've all enjoyed taking part. I'm sure you'll wish also to show your appreciation in the way that you know how to do for all the support and guidance that you've received from Lisa Mansell and her team. And I'd also like to thank all of the ministers who've participated in this event, and I'm sure that they will all take on board the results of your reviews and the points that you've made. You've not only got probably the right ministers sitting here who are here to listen as well as to answer questions, so they will have heard loud and clear what it is you wanted to say, but there are also a number of States members, I think 6 or 7, sitting up there in the gallery who are also listening, and so they also will have heard what you want to say. And that is a way of getting the voice of young people heard. Now, all of you have clearly worked incredibly hard, and your ideas and questions have been well presented. I hope the experience that you've had as young parliamentarians has been an enjoyable one, and each and every one of you will continue to engage in politics in Jersey, perhaps through campaigns, petitions, and of course voting when the time comes and you are eligible to vote. Some of you may even consider standing for election at the right time, and that also is a marvellous thing for you to think about. I think you've been most impressive, and it does genuinely give me hope for the future to witness the contribution and your commitment to this. It's really important for young people to remain involved in politics, because so much of what happens will affect you and will affect, in due course, your own children. And so it's enormously important to engage and be watchful, because that's what being a democracy is all about, that people are watchful and they participate. Thank you all very much indeed. The Youth Parliament stands adjourned.